Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first in our extraordinary webinar series for emerging leaders. We're so pleased to have you with us today. The aim and mission with this series is to bring some of the world's top leaders together with emerging talent, to build a bridge between future leaders and today's operators, to share knowledge and ideas, and to offer a support framework that adds real value to all. At every C-suite event we host, the importance of great talent is always a key theme. But great talent also needs nurturing, encouragement, and access to insight. So through this series, our mission is to create a platform that works with top leaders, the C-suite, and the best emerging talent across the world. We are recording today's webinar for those who can't join us live today, and the recording will be available on EP's YouTube channel in the next day or two. We'll share the link at the end of the session for anyone who would like to revisit or share this with colleagues. So with that in mind, I'm especially honoured to welcome our first guest in this series, Marc Dardenne, CEO of Modon Hospitality. Marc has worked with multiple prestigious hotel and real estate companies in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, including Grand Hyatt, Ritz-Carlton, Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, the Address Hotels and Resorts, and Giorgio Armani. Marc has built teams, launched brands, led transformations, and mentored talent across the globe. He'll begin today with a short reflection on his leadership journey before we move into a Q&A. You'll have the chance to pose your own questions via the chat function, so please do get involved. Marc, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really looking forward to this conversation. So this is the bit where I hand over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Helena, and a great pleasure to be on this webcast. When you contacted me, I was very excited about it because, one of the things I really think senior leaders should make their priorities is give back and really encourage young talents to join hospitality in general. I think it's such a wonderful business, and it really needs more promotion because it gives us so many opportunities, right? So when you look at hospitality in the world, 300 million people work in hospitality. That's 10% of the workforce. So you can imagine the opportunities that are given in today's world, right? So what I had suggested and we agreed on is that I talk you through my background and my career, but especially highlighting my learnings. And I'm talking about 10 key learnings that I can share with you and whoever dials in. But the things I think are very important. First, why did I choose hospitality? I love people, I love to travel. So I looked at my opportunities. I said hospitality or potentially airline pilot. I didn't qualify as a pilot, so I decided to go on hospitality. And it's really for the young talents today is find your passion. It was maybe a little bit easier during my time because there was less choices, right? Today, young talents have so many choices. They very often get confused. I recently taught a course at the hotel school in Lausanne, and a lot of the students ask me, what do you think my first step should be? What should I do, etc., etc. So it becomes more and more difficult. So finding your passion is obviously key. I think starting with a hotel school education is certainly a very good basis, even though you don't have to stay in the business. There's so many related business that you eventually can move on. So my recommendation, if you don't really know where you are, hotel school education is certainly a good way to go. And I'm obviously very biased. I love Lausanne, right? So please, I'll do a little plug-in for Lausanne, but there are other great schools in the world out there. When you look at some of my career highlights, I finished obviously hotel school, and then big decision what you do from there. And I grabbed the opportunity to go to Kuwait, Middle East, right, out of just because I wanted to really travel, experience a different culture, etc. And I took on a trainee position, got paid $150 a month, something like this, right? But my key was really to learn the business. And for me, one of the recommendations would be, early on, join great organizations. At that time, Hilton was one of the leading brands in the world. Join a great organization and learn as much as you can. Don't really worry too much about salaries and benefits, etc., because that will come later. The other point that I really learned was, you have to raise your hand and not wait for somebody come to you. So you go as a trainee. I went there as a trainee, and I looked for opportunities to make a difference. And I have a little story there that I said, look, why don't I do a study on the garbage room, right? So it's a little crazy to think about that, but I realized that so much was thrown into the garbage that nobody realized. So I told my food and beverage director, look, I want to work 2 days in the garbage room. He said that I would be crazy. Why are you doing that? Say, look, I'm going to prove to you that putting a system in place, metal detectors, and somebody who looks for the garbage would benefit the hotel a lot. So I worked through that garbage for 2 days. And by the time I had met actually my future wife, and she had serious considerations when she saw me in a garbage room, but we got over that. But after 2 days, I came back with a study and proved to the hotel that yes, you could actually save a lot of money. And they eventually introduced the system in the hotel. So my point is there: don't wait for people to recognize you. Go out there and find the opportunity. That would be my first learning. From Kuwait, I moved on to Benin, West Africa, a very, very difficult hotel. People didn't think I would be up for the challenge, etc. So my point was, take on the challenge, push yourself and push yourself to a limit where you're uncomfortable. If you're too comfortable in a situation, that won't improve you. You won't improve your skills. So I really pushed myself at certain stages. I thought I won't be able to do it because of the challenges, but eventually it worked out quite nicely. From Africa, I moved all the way back to Germany, and that was another learning curve because I had to work in a different environment. And one of the key learnings was there is to work with a team, through a team. At that stage, I worked, I tried to work very hard, 16 hours. I worked on the weekends. And my GM told me, look, I'm going to give you a promotion because you work so hard, but you're a terrible manager. That was a big statement because that's where I learned really I have to trust my team. First, hire the right people, the right place, motivate them, empower them, trust them, and truly learn that a team is so much more stronger than a single person, right? So that would be the third learning. From Germany, I went all the way to a place like beautiful paradise of Bali, Indonesia. Total cultural change. I'd never been in Asia before. Working in a different environment really taught me to understand cultural differences and the importance to be mindful and sensitive to these differences. I came from a very fast-paced environment of Germany to Bali, where suddenly culture played a big role, where family values played a huge role, and you had to really respect that to be also respected yourself. So that was certainly my fourth learning. On to Singapore, in Asia, great experience, loved the place. there the learning was really to never stop learning. I embarked on executive MBA whilst working, and again pushed myself to the limits because working full time, 2 kids, running a very busy hotel, and joining an additional learning was certainly a big challenge. And also being in an environment, most of my colleagues in the MBA were in different fields, you know. So whilst they obviously excelled in math and on strategy and on statistics, etc., I certainly did really well on creativity and marketing and sales, etc. So it's a great experience. From Singapore, I moved on to Bali, back to Bali, and worked with Ritz-Carlton. Obviously, a lot of people know the company, and you know, I got to learn the company. And one of the key learnings there was to understand the power of culture, a very strong fundamental culture within the organization. I guess people know about ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. And it was an interesting experience because I didn't really believe in it. I thought it was kind of an American thing. So when I joined the organization, I looked at the Credo card. I said, okay, there's nothing that I don't believe in, but really I'm fairly skeptical. I was then called to Atlanta, and we had an orientation with the founder of the company, Horst Schulze. And suddenly I realized, wow, this thing is really serious. We had Horst Schulze with all the senior team of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, plus the newcomers in a lineup. And they were talking about culture and the importance of culture and equality, etc. So I started to become a believer in that power of culture. By the time I came back, you know, I was really a full believer in it. And I saw the power of it when I saw lineups being done by gardeners, by engineers who said, we want to be part of a bigger thing, and we understand that we're contributing and we're really buying into this culture, you know. And all the other organizations that I built afterwards were not a copy of Ritz-Carlton, but certainly I brought a lot of inspiration from my experience with Ritz-Carlton. I was at the Ritz-Carlton in Dubai, happily ever after, you know, in a nice position. Suddenly I got a call from Ima, a big real estate company, and they said, would you like to join us to build the hospitality division? I said, wow, that sounds interesting. Let me call you back. And I had two choices. Either I take the safe route and I stay within a great organization and, you know, do whatever I have to do, or I challenge myself again and take a risk. And again, you know, everybody's different. Some people are risk takers, some people are more comfortable in what they do. But I took a huge risk and joined IMA. And we really built a hospitality division from scratch, starting with pretty much 0 employee to 4,000, opened 4 or 5 hotels within a couple of years, and really proved that you can build a hospitality division from scratch if you build the right foundation. Back to Ritz-Carlton, we introduced an IMA culture, and I think it's still alive, and the brands are still doing very well. So again, learnings is really challenge yourself, and most importantly, never look back. I never look back to say, yes, I shouldn't have taken that risk. I should have stayed with Ritz-Carlton. I could have done better, etc. When you have taken a decision, there's no way back. You know, look forward, and even if it's a wrong decision, whatever, just deal with it and move forward, right? So I think Afterwards, I had a few great experiences back in Singapore with the Kui family. We created another brand, Patina. I had also obviously experiences in more corporate positions. And I'm here in Abu Dhabi now, actually creating a hospitality division. Very excited about this opportunity and really put to good use all the things I've learned in the past. Couple of other learnings. One would be, find a mentor along the way. I had a couple of great mentors that I always, kept close by. It could be a mentor that could be a father or could be somebody related to you, but it could be also a great leader. I always try to look at great leaders and to understand what made them great, right? I did also look at bad leaders because you learn as much from bad leaders than you learn from good leaders, even more because, I would never like to be treated that way. So remembering a couple of the leaders that I had, luckily I had more good leaders than bad leaders, but certainly they are around. The other point would be, to stay curious, uh, especially in this world today where things are changing fast. Hospitality in general is very slow to change, it seems. We're very set in our old ways. The opportunity that you have when you start something from scratch, and I always say, and I said that in our organization now, is when you have that great opportunity to start something from scratch, no legacy, you have no luggage to carry. Why don't you think out of the box, right? So we're experimenting now with taking away all the pain points in the hospitality journey of a guest. The check-in is the pain point. How can we, take that pain point away using ChatGPT, using facial recognition, etc., and still keeping the personal contact, right? How can we really use technology to give our colleagues we don't want to cut FTEs and cut people. We want to give them better tools to do to give great service to our customers. So that's what we're currently looking at. And again, having a new platform gives us that opportunity. And finally, very important, obviously, hospitality, long hours, you're away from your family. I would say that never forget what is important in life. And certainly family is number one, friends, and of course, health, So just to recap a little bit on these 10 learnings, we started with saying whenever you work, step ahead, raise your hand to any opportunity that you have to be recognized and also contribute, right? So that's how you move forward. I've met in the past people who look at on the side and say, how come this person has been promoted and not me? How come that person is in a better position and not me? There's potential reasons for that, right? So really be proactive, be positive, embracing the challenges and being bold and getting out of your comfort zone. Every time you get out of your comfort zone, you're going to learn so much more, right? So, and really aspiring to jobs, maybe not 2 or 3 level above your job, but it's certainly 1 level up, right? So sometimes it's dangerous to go 3 level up because you might really fall back and be too challenged, right? So being bold, embracing the challenge. The other part is the power of the team. Um, I'm a big soccer fan. Unfortunately, Manchester United, we're not doing very well so far. But really, when you see great teams that perform well, it's not down to an individual, it's down to a team. The culture, the power of the culture, hugely important. Why? Because everybody in the organization wants to know that they're contributing, that they're belonging to something that is bigger, and that they're buying into that culture. To never stop learning, always be aware, don't stay back and think you know it all. We talked about the power of culture, taking a risk, challenging yourself, and certainly not looking back. We talked about mentorship, the importance of mentorship, staying curious, and finally keeping the focus on what is really important in life and in your career. It's certainly family, friends, and health. That's the 20 minutes introductions. And I think the interesting bit is always a Q&A. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions, and I'd love to be able to answer to them.
Yeah, thank you, Marc. Thanks for taking us on your journey with you. It was great to hear about how you started out and where the decisions you made along the way, and how that's got you to where you are today. And you really picked out some crucial elements to what it means to be a leader, I think. So thank you for that. And as you say, now's the opportunity to ask some questions to Marc directly, and really pick out some of those points that he's put to us. So the first one I will set off, I think, and that's really if there was a reset button and you were able to start out again, at 20, or whatever, would you choose hospitality again?
I think certainly I would. There's many more aspects of hospitality today than there were before, right? So honestly, when I started my career, the typical hospitality career was you go to a hotel school, if that's one to go, you do a management trainee, or like I did, or you start working as assistant chief steward, then you become chief steward, then you become assistant F&B, then you become F&B, then you move up the ladder, right? So then you become eventually general manager, maybe cluster GM, etc. That's the way to go. I think today there's so many opportunities within hospitality. That's why having a hotel school background, because it's not, again, I went recently back to Lausanne, and Lausanne is not a hotel school anymore. It's really a university, and Cornell, etc. So they really prepare you for life, and there's so many opportunities within hospitality that there is much more than it was before, right? So but a good point about finding your passion. Obviously we all know that if you find your passion, you don't have to work a day in your life, right? Because you love what you do. That's exactly why I'm still working now, because I really enjoy what I do, and I love what I do, etc. So finding that passion is absolutely key. And I remember asking, or I had a discussion with my son, and he said, we had the father-son discussion, and he said, I asked him, what do you want to do in life, right? So he told me, I want to do what you do. The question, do you know what I do? He said, not really. So, okay. So I put him in for a month in a hotel to work, and he worked all the divisions, right? He's stewarding and housekeeping, and after a month, I asked him, how was it? So he said, I enjoyed it, but I'm not sure if I have the 100% passion for it, right? So say, and I said it's very clear, if you don't have that, then don't do it, right? And he still loves hospitality. He enjoys staying in good hotels, etc. But he found a different path, and he found a path that ignited his passion. He's into startups, and in San Francisco, he's doing really well, and I'm super proud of him. But again, he's finding that passion. So if you ask me, would I do it all over again? Certainly. And I think it is a great business. Like I said, 10% of the workforce in the world is working hospitality. And it's actually very interesting to see what happened after COVID. honestly, a lot of us were wrong. We thought business travelers wouldn't travel anymore. We thought, okay, leisure travel. Of course, if you have not traveled for 2 years, you will want to travel. But suddenly, when COVID was over, we started again. We saw the big surge in travel, but we didn't see the dip. So still, it really changed a complete mindset, generally, globally, that people put the experiences first, the travel first, before anything else, right? So that means that our business is in really good hands and we have a bright future ahead of us.
Yeah, great. And you talked about the importance of culture and fostering trust within your team, and that you learned that as one of your sort of learning curves along the way. How do you do that? How do you go about doing that in sort of a bigger company? How do you do that to make sure everyone's on board?
Yeah, I mean, look at, for example, how did we approach here the journey within Modon Hospitality? We were a small team, but I wanted to make sure that we were all working, developing the culture, uh, our own culture. So we spent 2 days together with somebody who helped us along the way. And very similar to, for example, what happened with Ritz-Carlton, Horst Schulze didn't create the culture by himself. He had a team of people, Uwe Humbler and Bob Karasmi, a couple of the great people with Ritz-Carlton were there. They sat around the table and said, what is our purpose? What is our vision? What is our mission? What do we do? What is our behavior? What are our values, etc. So that's why I say that bit, but it's the easier bit. The hard one is really to make sure we live it every day. And that's where a lot of companies fail, right? We all have good visions, missions, and values, and posters on the wall and so on, and put it on the website. But does it really live within the organization? And I may say, great organizations, have that culture live day in, day out. And it starts at the top, right? So if, for example, myself, as the leader of the hospitality divisions, treat people with respect. But then I myself, next thing I do, I don't provide the respect to anybody in the organization. Doesn't matter who it is, right? Then already the culture is diminished, right? So if we don't walk the talk, I mean, walking the talk is certainly a primary point, walking the talk. So every decision we take, doesn't matter what decision, are we aligned with our values? If we are not, somebody in the room must say, hey, this is not right. This is not aligned. That decision is not aligned with our values. We need to have that freedom in the organization to say, okay, if I make a mistake, I really expect from my team members to say, hey, Marc, I don't think you behaved according to our values. So that's one. The second one is to make sure that it lives day in, day out, So that's why with Ritz-Carlton, what I learned, the only way to do it was to talk about it every day. So they have, and we are doing it also, certainly are going to do it when we're actually doing it already now. We have daily lineups where we talk about the culture, right? We talk about obviously VIP arrivals and glitches that we had, but also, we talk a topic. We talk about a topic. What does it mean really why is name recognition so important? So we talk about that, etc. So it's really keeping the culture alive, right? So one is to build your own culture. You cannot borrow a culture. That's why I never even attempted to take the Credo card of Ritz-Carlton and say, I'm going to apply it to EMA hospitality. That's not going to work. And then we did the same thing with Patina. We did the same thing we didn't apply. We created our own culture, and that's what we did here with Modon Hospitality. We created our own because it has to be your own. Once I have a little story. I have a lot of stories, but I have a story where somebody was working for a company, and at that time I was working for Ritz-Carlton, and he asked me, "Oh, can I take a copy of your Credo card?" I said, "No, you don't need to take a copy. You can have it." "Oh, like how can you give it to me?" So you can have it. It's fine. It's nothing, confidential. And he said, "Do you mind if I use it?" I said, "Yeah, you can use it." So he did basically took our Credo card and put his logo on it. And I
Wow.
said, "That's what we're going to do." I say, "Okay, good luck, good luck." 6 months later, I asked him, "Oh, how did your culture go on Credo?" I said, "Oh, it didn't work." Why? Because he borrowed the culture and he didn't put in the number one, it didn't fit maybe with his organization. And number two, it was not kept alive. He probably printed posters, he did the Credo cards, etc., but it was not kept alive, right? So much for culture. When you have other organizations that I've worked with, for example, Hyatt at that time in Asia had an unwritten culture. It was quite interesting. So it was not scripted like Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton was very scripted, nearly too scripted in my opinion, but then we kind of mellowed it out. But you have other organizations like Four Seasons, for example, great organization, a great founder, great leader. And once I think he was asked, how come every Four Seasons in the world, the people, the surveys of the atmosphere seems to be aligned throughout the organization. And you have different Four Seasons. You have some really posh ones, some maybe less posh, but you always get that feeling that you're well cared for. And his response was, "We only hire nice people, nice people," which is a good answer because if you only hire nice people, they will be nice to the customers, right? And they'll be nice to each other. So I think that's a beautiful way to put it. In a sense, I'm sure there's different ways, different ways on why they are where they are, etc. So you find some of these organizations that I'm, very fond of. I mean, Aman initially. I mean, now maybe it becomes a little bit more difficult because they're growing, etc. Has also their distinctive culture and so on. So it's really about building that culture that throughout the organization that makes you successful.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Now more than ever, I think with emerging generations that are choosing careers, it really matters that the culture actually stands up and it's not just a superficial, lip service, as you say. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
You've got
I think those, so sorry, I'm just thinking about something. It's also, today, sometimes we complain about the younger generation. And I hate that because, it's not the younger generation that is going to change. Their values have changed, right? And the ways they behave have changed. But it's up to us to change. If we really want to attract this younger generation to come and work with us, we have to operate differently. And that's sometimes we're stuck in our ways. And for example, with Ritz-Carlton, we were too scripted, right? So just the grooming standards for a lady was like 5 pages of, what you could do, what you couldn't do, grooming standards. If I'm hiring a barman now, if he doesn't have a tattoo on a ring around his nose, he's not a good barman, as an example, right? So things have really changed, and we need to change. And also, I think the younger generation ask many more questions than we used to ask. We joined a good hotel group, and then we worked according to the laws of the laws and standards and policies and procedures. And we were happy with that, right? But today, there's many more challenges, right? So for example, and especially on ESG, when companies pretend on greenwash, say we're doing all these great things, and then you have these young talents who join and suddenly realize it's only greenwashing. They get disappointed and they leave.
Yeah.
They don't stay 2 years because in my time or, in my career, I always said, okay, I have to at least stay 2 years, right? I don't, if I move before 2 years, that's bad. But today, if they get disappointed, they've been there for 2 months, they go. That's it. And it's not their fault, it's your fault because you promised something that you didn't deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll show with their feet, won't they? And on that, in terms of opportunity, we've got some questions for you, Marc. So
Yeah.
one of the questions is about opportunities in the industry. So does Marc think that the golden times of hospitality are behind us with the democratization of travel since the 80s, increasing the number of opportunities, but diluting the service levels below the very top end establishments? Or do people entering the industry have, in fact, more opportunities than before?
Yeah, I think, good one. I certainly think, nobody will be able to change my mind about the opportunities in the business, right? So I certainly think also with the latest trends, when you look at the push for hospitality, travel, experiences, and so on. But I also agree that there has been a great deterioration in terms of service levels throughout for many different reasons. I was in Europe during the COVID crisis, or reopened. We couldn't open the hotels anymore. People that didn't want to go back into the hotels and so on. So it was certainly a big challenge. Also, the push, obviously, with higher occupancies, higher rates. I see some of the hotels charging, really big amounts. In the luxury segment, $1,000 an average rate is not a huge number anymore. It used to be 500-600 for a luxury hotel at Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton. Now suddenly $1,000 seems to be the new norm for the top end, right? So I think, yes, I think service levels have deteriorated. That's why we need to certainly think out of the box and say, okay, how can we use also technology to improve, not only efficiency, but also service levels, right? So if we can anticipate guest needs, we can, improve service levels through productivity, introducing, again, like I said, technology, taking away all the pain points that we have, check-in, check-out, etc., special requests, and so on. So there's a lot of things that we can do and think out of the box. But certainly, I think there's great opportunities still. And I don't think it's going to end up in the next foreseeable future. In various areas now, we see the new trends in hospitality go towards, obviously well-being, much more than, spas, well-being, longevity centers, etc. Also the whole experience-driven travels you see that are people are really looking for. So there's so many various opportunities or new destinations that are open, right? I was part of PIF, two assignments with PIF. It's really a whole new country that is opening up to tourism and really unlocking fantastic opportunities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really positive message. And I've got a question here about the pressure for profits, which I'm sure you will have felt over the years. But is the pressure for profits or the shorter term expectations for them affecting the culture more than before, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. That's a very, very good point. And you see that specifically for, the larger the companies become, the more pressure there is. Uh, Clearly, public companies, obviously, are much more short-term in their thinking for obvious reasons, right? So obviously the smaller companies have their own issues, but certainly when I look at the large companies, and I've worked for some of these large players like Marriott or Accor, etc. So certainly the pressure is huge, and what is also happening is the dilution of brands. You know, if you have over 100, 120 hotels, you really lose the consistency of the brands, right? So again, back to Four Seasons, 120 hotels in the world, right? So big differences. I did work for Jumeirah and, you know, smaller number of hotels, but still big differences in terms of the quality of hotels, right? So yeah, certainly at the end of the day, we all, we're all in the business to make money. Certainly, it's always better to be with a partner that has a long-term view. And I did work with the Kui family in Singapore, who are great investors, long-term investors, because they own the hotels also. You know, so sometimes the issue comes through the fact that you have an hotel owner who might have a short-term view, and then you have an operator, right? So if you have an owner operator, generally they have a much long-term view. You take a group like, for example, Dorchester Group, they own most of their hotel. Peninsula own most of their hotels. They can have that long-term view in terms of investment, and take this decision with a, like I said, with a more of a long-term view.
Yeah, great. And what would you say is your proudest leadership moment so far?
It's always, I think, a couple of things. When you can leave back some sort of legacy. I mean, there's two things I would say. One part, no, it's actually three things. I think the the proudest part is the private part, right? So if you have a family that strives, you have great kids, you have been with your wife 45 years, etc. I think that's a great achievement. It's certainly because blending, a career in the hotel business that involves so much work, and still finding, a stable family life and so on. That's potentially, I think, my biggest achievement on the private side. The second part is really, I'm very proud of having developed great leaders, right? So, or mentored, or when I see some of my former colleagues who have really achieved great things, I'm super proud of that, right? Because I'm sure I potentially contributed to that. Um, the third part is when you have really created something, so, or you were part of a creation. So let's take the address brand, for example, that we launched. There were so little expectations for us to open our own hotels and be successful with it. And I was actually surprised that so many people wanted to join, because they wanted to have part of that legacy. They wanted to be part of a startup. And I'm experiencing the same thing here with Modon Hospitality. We're launching also two brands, and I see a lot of interest. People want to make a difference, right? So they want to make a difference. And having made a difference, you can, I always say, everybody can look back and say, I was part of that, right? And I'm so proud of it, right? So that's a great thing. So the address was a great experience. I think the experience with Armani, dealing with Mr. Armani himself, dealing with our chairman, dealing with a real estate company, and converting a fashion brand into a hospitality brand successfully, because the two hotels are still doing very well and are well recognized, was certainly another achievement. Patina in Singapore, a brand that took time to develop, but has now two hotels in Asia. Also nice. I think when you join a large organization, you don't see what you have contributed, right? You go to work every day, you work hard, you get paid for it. That's all great, but you know that legacy is not there, right? Because you don't see the difference that you have made. You know, you spend 2 years, 4 years with somebody, and certainly you have contributed, but you don't see the actual contribution. So I think that's why want to be part of a story. They want to be part. They want to be part or look back and say, I was part of that, right? So that would be kind of the three things that I think I'm very proud of.
Yeah, no, you make a good point there. It's very much about taking people with you, and building a story, as you say, that people can really feel proud of. So we have another question for you. So again, looking at the younger generation. So the younger generation are asking for more from their employers and leaders. Do you see this as this shift as a positive one?
Yeah, and I alluded to it a little bit before, but I really think, yes, absolutely. I think it's very positive. Even though some of my colleagues, when I hear, complaining about it is what it is, right? So we are more challenged and we need to change versus them changing. And I think really honestly, when I look at myself back, we didn't challenge enough. We didn't challenge. You were told what to do and you did it, right? Pretty much. And you were okay with it. We're fine. But I don't think that's the way it should work. And I think nowadays the challenge that they are being brought forward, are great, because people want to be part of the organization. A little bit of a story there also. We looked at colleague engagement. I was with Ritz-Carlton. I was in Dubai. And we were doing pretty well. We were in the 90s, right? So 90%, we were saying, I'm 100% engaged, right? So I'm engaged in the organization. And there was one hotel that really annoyed me because they achieved 100% on one question, obviously. People always were, never, you never get paid enough. The food is never good in the cafeteria, et cetera, so. But to be 100% engaged in the organization is a huge achievement. So I called my colleague in Shanghai and I told him, look, Mark, tell me, how come you achieve 100%? Do you give extra bonuses the day before you do the survey? Or what do you do? He said, you bribe them? Or what do you do? I said, no. I think one of the things we do really well here is that we really I sit with the line employees and really ask them, what do you want to contribute? How can you contribute? How can we help you to do better? How can you help the guests to do better, etc.? So I said, oh, that's quite simple. So I did that really every week. I was sitting with 8, 9 colleagues, etc. And it was incredible the feedback I received, right? Because I would have asked our front office manager, executive chef, say, tell me exactly how to improve the operation. They would have no clue. They said, oh, we're fine. We're doing great. I asked the housekeeper, I said, I got a problem. I got my wheels on my housekeeping trolley. They don't work. They make a noise. They disturb the guests. Or I need an ice chest so I don't have to go back and forth to the ice machine. Things like this. Or plenty of things like this. And then what we did is we immediately implemented them, whatever we could. And some things we couldn't do. We have to take a few months to do it. But they immediately changed and shifted the whole engagement level in the hotel because the housekeeper who said, let's change these wheels to make them not squeezy and disturb the guests. Wow, my suggestion has contributed to that. So that means that I mean something in the organization, right? That means I'm part of it. That's why I'm engaged. And that's why a year after we scored 100%. Maybe it was a coincidence, but it was incredible. So sometimes very, very small things make a huge difference because even a steward or an engineer, technically you think, is it important? No, of course, it's super important, right? So if they're part of it, it was, again, somebody asked me once, oh, can you hire this young lady to be a housekeeper? I said, yeah, we certainly can, but we have an interview process. And that person told me, but it's just cleaning rooms. I said, no, that person is not cleaning rooms, is creating experiences for our customers. And he never got it, but but
Yeah.
it was different, right? So if I hire somebody who just does a job, that person will leave after 3 months because they'll get a little bit more money or they're unhappy about something, they leave. But if I have somebody who's truly engaged or wants to really create an experience out of the hotel room and engage with our customer and really, if the kids arrive, they do something for the kids, they read the room to make sure that if you always have espresso, they add a few capsules of espresso, they put a little note on the table with their name. It's not a policy and procedure. That's all out of their own heart that they want to do that. If you have an organization with all these talents, that's when you are really successful.
Yeah, and it goes back to just listening and valuing your team, and then you'll get the most out of them, doesn't it? Um, and then you've given us so much of your time. Thank you. One of the last questions I think is interesting to hear, because you assume as a CEO now, leading brands, how do you keep yourself learning and evolving as a leader? How do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, no, great. I mean, one thing I started doing was teaching. So I went back to hotel school and I taught a course. And my idea was really exposing myself to the younger generation who would challenge me. And I thought that was a huge challenge. I was nervous myself, on the first day. I've never done this before. Can I do this? Are they going to reject me or what is this? Am I going to forget something and so on?
Mhm.
And it was a great experience. I thought it was a good experience for the students also. But for me, it was really very, very motivating to see the eagerness of this younger generation to do things, right? So that was for me a great learning. The ideas they had and the ambition they had, the way they worked together, the way they used technology to come up with results. I was truly amazed, right? So, and that was part of the learning. So that's one part. I think I always set myself at least one goal, like usual. It's not in January, but in general, I put a goal. So one of the goals is to learn another language, Spanish, because my granddaughter speaks Spanish, so I want to speak to her in Spanish. And so that's just an example, having a couple of goals for yourself to do. But I think the great experience was going back into a learning environment. Even if you are teaching, you learn as much as you teach, right? So that was a great experience. I'm
Fantastic.
doing just what I'm doing now, right? So getting feedback, getting questions, doing webinars, etc. I think it's a good way to keep up to date.
Great. And as we know just from listening to you, you're so passionate about getting new talent into the industry. If you had 1 minute, sort of an elevator pitch now, what would be your sort of pitch to people to come into the industry or stay in the industry if they're sort of a couple of years in? What would be that sort of sell to them?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the passion bit, I mean, you got to really be passionate to stay in the industry, right? Because again, you need to. It's like Isidore Sharp when he said, we only hire nice people. You need to be somebody that likes to serve. I don't know why. I always like to serve, right? So that's I like to be a waiter. I just liked it, right? Some people don't like to serve. on how our business is service industry, you know. So if you are that kind of person and you are a kind person, you're a nice person, big heart, etc., that's probably the business to be in, right? So if you're not, then maybe it's good to look for something else. I think also again starting, you know, sometimes you can't cut corners, right? If you really want to be in the industry, you need to learn from the basics, right? Because if you have never ever cleaned a room, you don't realize that it's not easy to clean a room and to do it in 20 minutes and having over 60 to 70 touch points in a room, make it perfect. That's when you really appreciate what a housekeeper is doing. And when you go to through a corridor and you see a housekeeper, if she works for you, you certainly, you know, recognize that. If you were a guest, you should also recognize that because that's incredible work, right? So yeah, my thing is back to passion, finding your passion. And again, if people don't really know, it's best to try, right? Go and try, like my son did, you know, go and try, see if you like it. And if you don't, if you're not 100% passionate, then maybe look for something else. It could be something related to hospitality because it's a super fun business. It can be related. It could be a consultancy. It could be, you know, IT. There's plenty of other things that are related to hospitality.
Right. Look, thanks, Marc. You know, thank you so much for your time and your openness. You know, it's been a real inspiration to hear from you and with someone of your experience and your commitment to, you know, the next generation of hospitality. So, and to everyone joining us, thank you. We hope today sparked some new ideas for you with renewed energy for your path forward. We will be sharing this webinar on our YouTube, as I mentioned earlier, for those that weren't able to join us, as we're dealing with different time zones. And I'm delighted to let you know that our next extraordinary webinar will be in 2 weeks on Wednesday, the 25th of June, where we'll be joined by Simon Halliday, who was a standout rugby international for England in the 80s and 90s, and then went on to work in global finance for the Lehman Brothers, and then built a unique entrepreneurial path representing wines produced from the estates of sporting legends. So we'll be hearing from him and exploring what success really means. Izzy has shared the flyer so that you have more information on that. But until then, take care. And thank you so much again, Marc, for your time.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.